What is my ideal Ghostface? Before we begin, I should say that there are spoilers, so nobody get in the comment section going, he revealed things from movies that came out years ago. Alright, now that we're done with that. The first thing I tend to like is the Ghostface or Ghostfaces being characters that are actually important to the film's plot. Like Billy and Stu both have multiple scenes before the reveal. This is not the case with Mrs. Loomis in the sequel, but I'm okay with it because the twist there was she was such a tertiary character that you wouldn't even think it would be her. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of having multiple ghost faces. Like I think two or maybe three is the max number I would go for, because if you start stretching it out to more and more characters, it's harder to give each one the focus to where when they're revealed as the killer, it has as much impact as you would probably like. The second part of this is intimidation factor. A lot of the ghost faces are not physically intimidating in the sense that we've been able to see, Sidney, Dewey, Gale, and the other characters be able to fight back to some degree or another. But when they're on that phone and they're, I have your friend hostage and that type of stuff. I've always been a really big fan of those dilemma type situations. A an example of Ghostface not looking intimidating, and I hate to rag on it, but that Scream 2022 where Sydney is on the phone with Ghostface and she chides him for picking the same house and hangs up on him. And I know that the point of that scene is to show that she's experienced and that she's dealt with them before, but again, it's like she was experienced for both Scream 3 and Scream 4, and the ghost faces there were still intimidating enough for her to not just so casually be like, yeah, whatever, who cares? The third part is probably motive. So with the second film, Miss Loomis wants revenge. Third film, you have, oh, it's my sibling. Fourth film, wanting fame. Fifth film, crazy fans. And then you get to the sixth one and it's revenge all over again. And listen, I know that realistically, the more of these you do, the harder it is to not come off as scraping against the pot. But imagine if, so like the twist, the main difference between Mrs. Loomis and Richie's dad is that, oh, it's, the father instead of the mother, and the kids are in it too. Wouldn't it have been so much better if it's like I know a lot of people like Quinn, the sibling of the ghost face from the last movie, wanting revenge for the death of her brother, and the good guy detective dad has to stop another one of his crazy kids from trying to kill the people who were in the right to get rid of him. Just that's an example where you can have something that's kind of similar, but if you put enough twist on it and just kind of make it have variety, it's not as big of a problem. This is actually to the credit of Scream 2022. I really like the opening scene of that movie where Tara survived, because so often the opening sequence is a murder, and it was nice to see a subversion of that. I wish it was more subversive. Oh, and the last criteria, and this is one that most of them don't really get that well. And it's not that big of a deal to the actual film itself, but just to the series, which is legacy. So again, most ghost faces, unfortunately, and I can't help but think of Joe, are only going to appear one time. But in a continuous, ongoing narrative, that one appearance can be very impactful if done correctly. So Billy and Stu are brought up in all the sequels. Um, Again, even in just being in the first film, their actions reverberate for years and even decades after their demises. But when you get to the ghost faces from the second to fourth film, I mean, you can watch Scream 4 and like completely forget the third one even happened. No one brings up, hey, didn't your brother try to kill you some years back? Now, the subversion to this, to the credit of the sixth film, was with Richie. But, and I'm just saying this as a person who's attempting to be honest, if every sequel directed by Wes Craven made the choice to not mention any of the ghost faces beyond the original pair, it almost feels like by making the killers of the sixth film want revenge for one of the killers from the fifth film seem like radio silence is whacking off or otherwise trying to hype up their OC that they made. Basically, they're giving him a sense of importance retroactively that you have to ask yourself, why him? Why was no one looking for revenge when Mrs. Loomis died or when Mickey died or when any of these other intervening intermediate ghost faces ended their reign with a death? Like, that's not something that is that big of a deal, and that's why it's not. I saved it for last, but it is something I'd like to see more of in the future. Like, if we can have a series where the ghost faces that weren't the first two actually matter and their actions reverberate, let's see this done more often with, in my opinion, better characters than Richie and Amber, but whatever. So yeah, those are the criterias for what would make an ideal ghost face for me. I am flexible with these. So again, like Mrs. Loomis wouldn't meet the appearances threshold. Again, I explained why that was okay. Most of them do not meet the legacy portion, which I'm content with. When you're watching one movie, you're not really thinking about the next one, at least if you're the person who made it. But yeah, that's just what I would get out of a ghost face at its best or at his or her best. These traits all enveloped in one or two characters. So thanks for watching.